Hello, my name is Dr. Allie Baumgartner, and I am the Paleontology Collections Manager here at the Sternberg Museum. And today, we're going to be talking about VP3. This is Tylosaurus prorigor. This is probably the largest mosasaur. It's definitely the most complete mosasaur that we have in our museum. And for that reason, people really like to come and study it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the history of this specimen in particular and how and why people study it. Like I mentioned, this is Tylosaurus prorigor. It is FHSM VP3. It's one of the, I would say, showcase pieces in our collection. That's part of the reason why it's up on exhibit. It's very nice looking. So this specimen was uncovered in western Kansas about 100 years ago. So looking pretty good for its age. The reason, part of the motivation for displaying it like this is because this is pretty close to how it was found. It was laid out. Unfortunately, this wasn't a complete mosasaur. If you look really closely at the specimen, you'll notice in the middle all the vertebrae a little bit too perfect, and that's because when this was found, there was a gully going through the belly. We had the front end, we had the back end, but we were missing the little bit in the middle. Fortunately, we knew how big it was because we had the front and the back, and we know what's going on in the middle. You're basically just repeating the same vertebrae. That also illustrates, though, the difference in mentality between the way that we would historically display specimens and the way that we do it now. In the past, we were really interested in aesthetics. We wanted this to look as nice as possible. We wanted to have the most complete, the most beautiful specimens. And sometimes that meant not drawing attention to the parts that may be missing. So many people can come and visit this collection and may never realize that those really perfect vertebrae in the middle of the specimen aren't original material. Nowadays, we tend to do things a little bit differently, tend to make it a little bit more obvious. This is original material, this is reconstructed, so that we're not trying to trick people. This is what we call a Sternberg mount, because it was made by George Sternberg. And you can see this style of plaster mount across the country and even in museums in Canada. It was basically the calling card of George Sternberg. So you can see it has this particular color and this particular texture. And we have multiple specimens with this sort of mount across the museum and even in our collections. It's got some pros and cons. First of all, this is absolutely stunning. That is part of the reason it's up on exhibit. We got 30 feet of beautiful mosasaur that you can look at. You don't really need any imagination to realize what this beast probably looked like when it was living in Kansas. On the downside, though, it's really, really heavy. This is made almost entirely of plaster, plus this is a 30-foot mosasaur that has been petrified. It has been turned to stone. So you have very heavy bones mounted in very heavy plaster, and so this has been built into the exhibit, and we're not moving it anytime soon. That also means that we are really limited in the ways that this can be studied. I cannot take this off of exhibit. We tried to take the skull off, and that wasn't going anywhere. So you are pretty well limited in two-dimensional measurements or whatever you can manipulate while it is still mounted. And that means that if something isn't facing you, it can be really difficult to study. It's not like we can take a bone out to do histological sectioning. It's pretty much all attached. And so that means that when people come to visit, and a lot of people come to visit to look at our mosasaurs, it's a bit of an ordeal to get people into this case. So I've mentioned it before, it's 30 feet long. This is a really big mosasaur. And it is an entire exhibit. We have 3 of these large panes of glass that are way, way bigger than I am tall. And so it takes a lot of people and a lot of planning in order to remove a pane of glass, shift any other panes of glass in order to access this. So in order to remove the glass, it takes one person standing on a fulcrum to push up the middle of the frame, because this is 30 feet. The wooden frame is sagging. It's just a reality of materials. So you have one person holding up the center with a fulcrum, and then 2 to 3 people picking up and taking out the glass and moving it. So it's 3 to 4 people to take the glass out, and then to put the glass back in, because you're working against gravity, it takes one person on the fulcrum, and then 4 people to pick up the glass, so that you can again go against gravity to pick it up. And these are really big panes of glass, and so they'll kind of flex in the middle, so you need multiple people to make sure that everything is perfectly in place. And every time that we move these panes of glass, there's always that worry, is this the time we shatter the glass? And fortunately, knock on wood, that's never happened. And so because we have this specimen being studied so often by so many different people, we wanted to try to find that happy medium between making this as accessible as possible, but also protecting the specimen. And this is a wonderful museum. We have a fantastic Western Interior Seaway collection. Unfortunately, we are kind of in the middle of nowhere. We are in the middle of Western Kansas, and it can take a while to get here. You either have to drive across the continent or take planes, trains, and automobiles, and it's a bit of a hassle. And so making this accessible to people who cannot make it here is really important to us. So recently, we 3D scanned this big boy, and oh boy, was that an adventure. So in order to 3D scan this, we had to take off all the glass. We actually had to do it in a couple of different sections, in a couple of different sessions on different days, because it's just a lot of Mosasaur, and we wanted to make sure that we had as much detail as possible to make it fair trade for people who wouldn't necessarily be able to interact with the specimen directly. So we scanned it in pieces and then virtually put those pieces together. The scanner that we use is a Creaform Go scan, and basically it is a structured light 3D scanner. So what that means is that it will send a really strange pattern of light onto the specimen, and then it will measure the reflection back and use that to reconstruct the shape. Because of that, it can be kind of difficult to maneuver and make sure you're getting all of the parts that you need to get. So the scanner is larger than an old-fashioned telephone. It's pretty big, maybe 18 inches tall. And being able to manipulate that, again, you need to be approximately 18 inches away from the specimen and need to be able to get all around on all sides. And that was fine when we were working with the flat half. Not even half, the flat majority of the specimen. That wasn't so bad because it was pressed into the plaster. We didn't have a whole lot of excessive relief, and so we were able to scan it pretty easily. The skull, this was another beast entirely. As you can see, it's coming out at a little bit of an angle. So that means that while we can very easily scan this side of the Mosasaur and get a little bit of the back and a little bit of the bottom and a teensy bit of the back side, really we're missing most of it. And so trying to maximize the amount of information, maximize the amount that we can scan, but recognizing when we get to the point of diminishing returns, we're not necessarily going to be able to scan everything on the backside of this Mosasaur. But we do have the two-dimensional images that we have taken of the specimen that also exist to supplement anything that has been scanned. So ultimately, all of the 3D scans of this will go online. They're not quite up there yet, but they'll be available online. in our Morphosource catalog. In addition, you can find the two-dimensional photographs of many of our specimens, particularly those from the Western Interior Seaway, in our online database and collective access. Because we understand that it is very important that we make sure that these specimens are available for as many different people as possible, in as many different places as possible. Because just because someone can't make it to the middle of nowhere in western Kansas doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to study some really cool big mosasaurs. So thanks for joining us today. If you like what you saw, you can like and subscribe to see more of this every week. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for joining us in A New Way to Museum with the Sternberg Museum of Natural History. If you enjoyed this video, like it and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell for notifications when we release a new video. Support us on Patreon for early access and exclusive content. You can also follow us on all our social media. Links are found in the description. Thanks for watching, and follow your curiosity to new discoveries.